We're back here on the Greg Peterson Experience on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network. You're going to notice two things. For one, professional bettor Randy McKay and our first ever fan of the year here at VSiN is joining me in studio. And if you're watching on VSiN.com, if you're watching this on something like YouTube TV, I hold here a big giant book of props that Randy brought from the Westgate. I mean, how many props would you have to say there's in here? At least 500.
Yeah, they've gotten more over the years. The first year, I think I remember betting with them was maybe like the 2001 Super Bowl when I came up from Laughlin to bet, and they were maybe at 50 or 60 at that time. So they've improved every year. And of course, they were at Imperial Palace back in that day, if anybody remembers that. And yeah, they've been through it for the years. Jay and his crew has done a good job, and you know, Jimmy Vaccaro started the props, and they've kind of expanded the props to what it is now. And, of course, now with these new states, they come out a little earlier before the Westgate Thursday. This used to be the time when everybody used to come out to Vegas. You used to have way longer lines because these were the first time the props used to come out. But now the other companies open up these props before, so there isn't quite the action and line that they used to have.
Yeah, it's so unique to take a look at the way that Super Bowl props have evolved over the years, because it used to be like, oh man, I'm able to take a look at a player prop for insert your backup tight end here, and that was something where it's like, oh, that's really cool. But in this day and age, now there's a lot more player props that are available. But I think that just so many of these companies, the Westgate, who we've got this big giant book of props from, they certainly have the most expansive of the props that I've seen thus far. They've done such a good job of just being able to offer so many different options that you can't find on any given game, which is why the Super Bowl is so unique with the betting opportunities.
Yeah, and if you specialize, like we were talking about you do in college basketball, there's probably 20 of those cross-sport ones with the totals of the games. There's a bunch of NBA ones. There's a bunch of soccer for the European people. I mean, there's every kind of a dichotomy you want to look for in these props as far in the cross sport. And then on the game itself, there's player-to-player matchups and then over-unders and different ones I bet every year. But this game is a little tougher for me. I mean, I think it's going to be more of a high variance. Probably, usually every year I like the largest lead to be under. In this game, that could go over very easily with these two teams because one team might get way ahead.
Yep, and then there's always the trap of there will not be a team that scores 3 consecutive times. That is one that trips up a lot of people. I still remember, I forget which Super Bowl it was, but I actually took it and I was able to hit on the no on a team that scored 3 consecutive times. I think it was the Chiefs versus 49ers game from a few seasons ago, but certainly that is one that it always trips up a lot of people. And when it comes to betting the Super Bowl, what is your approach to it? Because I know that in terms of a lot of sports, you're a little bit more of a sides and totals guy, but I know that when it comes to the Super Bowl, you do a great job of being able to dive into these props and be able to extract a lot of value from it.
Yeah, I have betting partners, and they do props all year. I only get real into them on my own during the playoffs because more is offered, and of course you can get more down usually. And some of the books, don't like a year-long prop better. They don't mind if you bet the playoffs and bet the Super Bowl props because they have so much action on those. They're not going to limit your accounts if you're betting them during that time. So I'm pretty safe about my accounts as far as only betting them during the playoffs and during the Super Bowl. But I will get down some during the season. As far as going into this week, I don't really have a feel yet on this game, so I didn't make any bets tonight. I just kind of sat and observed and, listened to a couple friends of mine that got down a few of them and heard from a couple of the other guys covering the, like Patrick Everson you have and a couple of the others, Todd Dewey, they're covering, and they brought up a couple that other people were betting. So that kind of gives you a feel where the lines were going. I watched some of the board. The one that was getting hit the most was the under on the punts, and that was like set at 7.5, and I think that gone to like 140 by the time I left.
And I do think that that is so interesting to be able to just gauge all of these props as well, because it is a game that I feel like there's more question with this year than in past years, because you've got both quarterbacks are dealing with a little bit of an injury. No doubt about it. The Patrick Mahomes injury has been getting a lot more attention because it's a little bit more recent, and his high ankle sprain, you could see that it was still a little bit of a limiter for him in that AFC Championship game. But I do still think that Jalen Hurts has some concerns as well, because while the Eagles were able to get both wins very convincingly in the NFC playoffs, it's just a case where they did play against the New York Giants. They played against a 49ers team that game got marred by the fact that Brock Purdy got injured in that game. So you had Josh Johnson out there, and then you had Brock Purdy, who literally could not throw, having to try to just generate anything whatsoever. And that leads to big-time question marks with both of these players. And my question to you with regards to all these questions is, do you value being able to just get a little bit more information and accept maybe getting a little bit less on the line? Maybe you have to take a look at a player prop. Maybe you like the under on like Patrick Mahomes yards. It goes down by like 4 or 5 yards. Would you rather fire it in and get the best of the number, maybe not knowing 100% the information, or would you rather have that good information and accept a little bit of a lesser number?
The Patrick Mahomes one, as far as that goes, I'd definitely wait on him, wait on Kelsey, because them numbers are always going to get pumped up. You know, last Super Bowl they were in against Tampa, them numbers went so high. I was out in Iowa at the time at a Betfred sportsbook, and they went seriously high on those, and I had a good day because I was taking the unders back, and I'll probably do that in this Super Bowl once them numbers get up. As far as Hurts goes, the Westgate itself put out the Hurts numbers pretty low compared to market, and so if you like the over on Hurts, definitely look at the Westgate. They have opinion on that. They do have opinions. They have guys that have done this for many, many years, and they used to be on the VSiN shows, and they've done these for many years. They're pretty much experts at it. They do make mistakes. They probably don't admit them as much, but there is a few out there. But if you like Jalen Hurts in this Super Bowl, definitely bet him over at the Westgate.
Yep, and I'm sure everyone, you always want to highlight the good, and the bad, you sort of want to gloss over it as well. The real ones, we always point out our faults, and we try to be able to cherish the triumphs as well. But it certainly is just interesting to take a look at everything that we are getting with regards to the Super Bowl. And when it comes to the Super Bowl, we're going to talk a little bit more about the props on the flip side as well. But what have you made out of the line movement that we've gotten thus far? Because it opened up with darn near every book having the Chiefs as some form of favorite. Circa was the most demonstrative in that, where I sit right now with the Chiefs being a 2.5-point favorite. Instantly on that Sunday, it swung all the way to the Eagles being right around a 2 to 2.5-point favorite. This is now settled in at 1.5. And with the current information that we've got right now, I personally have not bet a side on this game because I'm just waiting for more information on both of these quarterbacks before firing in. But as of right now, I think that this is a relatively correct number that we have currently on the board.
Yeah, I have a small position when the line went down. I do have the Chiefs right now. Small position. Don't know if I like it yet or not. Don't know what I'm going to do with it. Don't know if I'll keep it. As far as the over total goes, I've been betting under all the playoff games since I got lucky with the Buccaneers. That was my first under bet, and I snuck in with that one against Dallas. And I bet all the rest of the totals. Last week I had both totals under the total, and of course the Philly one was my biggest position. That came, thankfully, not thankfully for the game, but he got hurt. That worked to my advantage. And the Chiefs game, I thought the total was too high too with the Mahomes injuries. I actually bet first half and bet the under there, so that worked out well. This game, I see too much high variance. Now, if this total keeps going 51 or higher, I might look at the under first half and go that way. But so far, not many bets for me. Sometimes I make positions right away on the Super Bowl, and sometimes I don't. And this one, just on a small bet on the Chiefs at at about even money, which I got a bad line, and I might take more if we get closer to that 3 number.
Yep, and you bring up something so fascinating as well, because you pointed out the overs that we saw early on in the playoffs, and then it just crashed under. And that's a topic that I'm going to get in with you on next, as Randy McKay, he's a terrific professional sports bettor, and he's joining me in studio right here on the Greg Peterson Experience on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network. Being rejoined now by professional bettor Randy McKay, and the first ever Fan of the Year of VSiN as well. I remember that very well, and you touched upon something just before we went to break that I think is so fascinating, because you were talking about betting all the unders in the NFL playoff games. We saw the first few games go over. You and I both got very lucky on that Cowboys versus Buccaneers game. I know that there were one or two people on social media trying to tell me, oh, the under was the right side, and it's like, you got 4 missed extra points, and it went under by a half a point to a point, depending upon where you were looking. I would consider that to be some good fortune. I was on the under, and I was certainly not apologizing about that win, but felt like that was one that I was not supposed to get. But ever since then, the unders have been hitting very, very much so. And I take a look at this in a wide variety of sports, because we've seen it a lot in terms of, like, I remember NBA last year, you had the unders cashing like wildfire towards the beginning of the season, and then you see a run on overs. Right now in college basketball, we've seen a relatively big run on overs thus far as well. And how much do you take a look at things like this, where you've got a big trend in a sport where you're seeing a bunch of overs, a bunch of unders, maybe a bunch of like road favorites covering, and you think that there's going to be some regression, and you just take a look at sort of going contrarian in that sort of way?
I'll give you a pro tip, right? I know you guys do a pro tip every hour.
I love it.
You know, and this is one of the first things I learned back in the day when I first started sports betting 25 years ago from an older gentleman in Laughlin, Nevada. He goes, I know you like these games. Look at the board. Look at the underdog side. Look for unders as well. But look at the underdog side and look for a game you like the most there, and then kind of correlate it to some unders, which I started off doing. That was one of the best pro tips I ever got. So instead of looking at favorites and over people out there, look at underdogs and under.
Absolutely. And I do land on more unders than overs, obviously. I'm not going to go out there and it's like we got 50 games on the board and I'm taking 50 unders. That's not the approach that you do want to be taking. You want to be actually evaluating these games. But I certainly do agree with you, because, I mean, books just, it's in their nature to shade these totals up a little bit more, especially a big game like this one where there's going to be a lot of people are going to be attending a lot of Super Bowl parties. How many people want to be that person walking into a Super Bowl party being like, oh, I really hope that they don't throw Travis Kelce the ball because I've got under insert your amount of receptions that you bet here, or I've got under yardage for Isaiah Pacheco, something like that. I do think that it's just human nature to be rooting on points, to be rooting on offense. Meanwhile, there's some of us that actually root on defense, and I think that that's a good way to go just in terms of whether you're betting NBA, NHL, what have you, but I think that that holds true for the Super Bowl, and I do think that a lot of these props, they are shaded upward in terms of yardage and what have you.
Yeah, and they'll get shaded a little bit more here when 80% of the money comes in here in the next week. That's a nice thing. Some of these Super Bowls only used to be a week after the championship games. Now with 2 weeks, is able to form even more of a public impression on the line, which helps prop bettors, and that's one of the things over the years. I've found some pretty good numbers. The one I've stayed away from, as far as the laying chalk, that's killed some sports bettors, is safety one, because Super Bowl is a different kind of game. It's more, where people can get more nervous because it's so high profile. There can be safeties. So the safety has cash for the public bettors, and they always bet that one heavily down. Of course, the overtime had a big streak there till finally the Patriots took care of that. But that used to be one always that the public would come in on betting yes overtime. So there's a few out there that I call them bridge jumpers that I've stayed away from. I haven't stayed away from the overtime one, but I have stayed away from the safety.
Yep, and I still remember in back-to-back years the safety hit as well, which that made it very, very skewed on that one. I still remember the one where you had the Peyton Manning snap go over his head. That was just absolutely ridiculous a few years ago in that one as well. And I do think that taking a look at some of these props, some of the juicier ones, there can be a lot of value on. Like, I noticed one at DraftKings towards the beginning of the weekend. I'm going to be looking for the best number on this one for no kick to hit the crossbar / post. I was seeing on DraftKings minus 650. Someone alerted me that apparently at Caesars this might be minus $6 as well. When you take a look at these sort of prop bets, are these ones that you place year in and year out, and if you lose one, so be it? Or do you just stay away from taking a look at some of these no's that might be relatively chalky altogether?
Well, on that one, it depends on the kicking and the surface. You know, they're playing down in Arizona. Actually, that's the only Super Bowl I've ever been to was in 1995, Cowboys and Steelers back in the Neil O'Donnell game. It was, and that was, of course, at Tempe Stadium. Of course, they play at the Toaster now in Glendale, and that's a good kicking stadium from what I can remember. You know, you're not going to have any problem with the grass or anything. You got two pretty accurate kickers, so I don't think either one of them will probably miss a PAT. They might miss a long field goal and hit the post, but that'd be pretty unlucky for you.
Yeah, Ben, I do think that taking a look at some of these is very interesting to say the least, because there are always these props in which you're taking a look at them, and there are some that are very, very big plus money, and you just mentioned some of the ones that, well, there could be pitfalls with them, but is there maybe a prop or two that you're taking a look at, and there might be a little bit of money to be made with it, and it's a little bit of a longer shot that might be a little bit sort of out of sight, out of mind, not one that necessarily gets a lot of love?
I don't usually take too many plus props, but there's one over the years where I've played the defensive score or special team score, and that one's been pretty good. I did that, of course, with the Seattle games. That worked out okay. I think I hit 1 out of 2 there when they could have won both games, and of course they goofed it up at the end. So I hit that one. I hit the Baltimore when they've been in the Super Bowl. I hit the because Jacoby Jones, and of course Seattle I hit with Harvin. I think returned the kickoff.
And then the Devin Hester many years ago.
Yeah. I don't think I had that one. I probably should have looked at that one. But there's a few where I've benefited. I don't know if they'll get it. You know, these two quarterbacks are pretty good about not turning the ball over, even though Mahomes once in a while gets careless. And they don't have, of course, the return is affected now with the new rules. Maybe, even a punt return would be tough because we only seen them like 1 or 2 punt returns all year too. So, that's a tougher prop to hit now.
Yeah, it is a little bit unfortunate because I've always been a fan of some of those good kickoff returns for touchdowns, and I know that there's always going to be a yes/no whether or not the first kick is going to be a touchback as well. And when it comes to betting on the Super Bowl, I know that you mentioned that there's going to be a lot of public money that is going to be coming in. If you're someone that is looking to go a little bit more contrarian, take a look at some of these unders. When would you recommend firing in on a lot of these props? Because we're going to be seeing a lot of movement. Obviously, I'm sure that you, much like myself, would recommend to good people at home shopping around, being able to get the best of the number, because these numbers are going to vary from book to book. You're going to find much more variance on a prop than the side and total. But what would you encourage those that are maybe taking a look at some player prop unders to do?
Probably wait till Sunday morning, about 2-3 hours before the game is usually the best time. I've been out here for the Super Bowl and been betting for about 3-4 hours constantly till the game started. Looking at either on my computer or at the counter even back in the day, betting all those before the game, running around, emptying your pockets on different ones. And, of course, now with the apps, make sure if you do come out here, sign up for all the apps. I got all the apps in Colorado, so I'll be hitting the unders on their sites. And I don't middle usually. I usually take my best position because, props, I'm a little bigger better, so I don't look to middle very often.
And you don't want to cancel out a winner.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's not worth it for me to come back and do that. Last year I did hit a nice middle, but I had a nice offer from a sports book and hit that. I hit the Rams money line to the Cincinnati game to the plus money, so that worked out well. It was a really good Super Bowl for me last year, and hopefully it is this year.
And let's hope it is. Randy, appreciate your time today on the Greg Peterson Experience.
Visit VSiN.com to get current odds, listen for free, find showtimes, and download VSiN sports betting podcasts.